Sri Lanka observed a national holiday Wednesday to honor the military's victory over the Tamil Tiger rebels. Stores were closed and security personnel patrolled the streets of the capital, Colombo. Meanwhile, outgoing U.S. Ambassador Robert Blake held a news conference to express support for international calls to determine if human rights laws were violated during the final phase of the fighting between Sri Lankan forces and Tamil rebels.
On the question of war crimes, we think it's important for the international community to have more information about what happened on both sides during the recent offensive in northern Sri Lanka. And that's one of the reasons that we press for access for the ICRC and for the UN.
It is the most pointed such comment by a U.S. official since Sri Lanka declared victory over the Liberation Tigers of Tamil Eelam. Reports of massive civilian casualties during the fighting triggered calls of concern by international humanitarian groups and the United Nations, though questions have been raised whether Washington spoke out forcefully enough. Both the Sri Lankan government and the rebel LTTE claim the other was deliberately killing civilians. Ambassador Blake, who is slated to become the State Department's Assistant Secretary for South Asia, says the United States repeatedly expressed concern about how civilians trapped by the fighting were being treated by the Sri Lankan army and the rebels.
And were effectively used as human shields. But we also called on the government to abide by its own commitment not to use heavy weapons in the safe zone. And I think there were some violations there.
Colombo maintains its troops did not kill civilians, but rather accomplished the world's largest successful hostage rescue mission by freeing tens of thousands of Tamils from the rebels. The United Nations says it remains unclear if the combat zone has been cleared of all civilians, especially the injured and the infirm. UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon will arrive in Colombo late Friday to press for access to the former war zone and the government-supervised camps that house more than 200,000 Tamils displaced by the fighting. Steve Herman, VOA News, Colombo.